Okay. Good morning, and welcome to Mystical Teachings from the Tanya. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zichron Kedushin in Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Welcome this morning from Tangier, Morocco. Good afternoon, Rabbi. John is with us in North Carolina. Shalom. Anna in Budapest. Hello. Andrea in Phoenix. Good morning. Diane. Good morning to you in London, Ontario. And Liba and Davida in New York. Good morning. Robert, shalom to you in Boston. And Lara is with us in Queens, New York. Oh, close to the oil, perhaps. Clem in Brisbane, where it's getting late. Goes to sleep with Tanya. Great way to go to sleep. Great way to start your day, go to sleep. That's great in the middle of the day too, wherever you are. Eugenia in Calgary, Boker Tov. Elham in LA, welcome. Rena in Colorado, thank you for joining. TJ, Erev Tov to you in Melbourne, Australia. Freemat is with us. Yes, Unfazed last night. It was amazing. I enjoyed it immensely. I hope you all watched. If not, you can get it on Chabad.org. You can still watch it. Very worthwhile. Amy, Boker Tov D, Boker Tov to you. Erica, shalom to you in Norway. Michael is with us in Germany. Hello. Aryeh from Florida, welcome. Former Montrealer. Casey, shalom. And Susan in Scranton, Pennsylvania. We have Michelle Mayer, Alyssa, Jeff, Leanna, Tim, Reggie, welcome back. Christo, Boker Tov. Oh, you met my son, JRL. And my son from California. Okay. I'll send regards. Thank you for the regards. Beautiful. Folks, tomorrow we finish Tanya. I mean, the second book of Tanya. We don't finish Tanya. We finished. And the following day, we're starting the third book. So it's all exciting stuff that's happening over here. Amazing. So make sure that we come for a siyum. A siyum means a conclusion. Conclusion, even if you haven't been part of the entire learning, that's okay. Try to fill you in as best as we can. All right. Chapter 12, the final chapter of Shar Yichud Ve'amunah, where we're trying to appreciate Koyach HaPoel B'Nifal, the power of creator within creation. What we're talking about in this part is we'll call Yehuda Tato, the lower level of unity. Higher level of unity is that there is no reality but God. The lower level of unity is that there's a reality, there is diversity, there is distinction, but ultimately, what is it? Nothing else but God. It sounds the same? Not really the same. One is top down, one is bottom up. One is seeing it from the way the ray of sun is within the sun, that it is no mitzias, no reality to any creation, because the creation is only but a part of God and nothing separate from God. And then there is something. But what is that something? That something is nothing else but the power of God. We gave an example of the arm, if you recall. The arm. You can look at it two ways. You can look at your arm, that you've got a normal way that we'd look at an arm is that we got an arm. It's got so many things it could do. It could throw a baseball. It could write a poem. And it could reach out to another person to help. Do a mitzvah. Give tzedakah, help a person in any way. A mitzvah. What's the ultimate purpose of the arm? It's mitzvah. It's to do a mitzvah. In other words, there's a reality of an arm, but that's the ultimate. That's the lower level of unity. Higher level of unity is, actually there is no arm. All there is what God wants. And what's that? Mitzvah. So he made an arm so there could be mitzvah. So what's really the arm? Nothing but an extension, or in reality, a part of the divine will. That's what animates it. That's what gives it life, right? The arm doesn't exist on its own. It's God animating it in a manner that it is nothing else but an extension of his will that animates it through the whole process of emotions and so on and so forth, as we've been explaining and continue to explain, that is totally bound up like the ray of sun within the sun. So that seems to be a lot more lofty, spiritual kind of high, called Yichudi Elah, the higher level of unity. So what are we speaking about? A lower level. Well, there is actually something about the lower level that is even greater than the higher level of unity. It's not just because, listen, we're human and therefore we can only, what's the word, achieve so much, or can be aware so much, and this lofty level is maybe beyond us, and therefore God gives us a lower one that we can kind of connect to. That's actually more than that. Let's get into that, and maybe we'll explain that. We'll explain that a bit later. So the process that we've been speaking till now, the creation through emotions, because emotions is where it begins otherness. So also in the divine order of things, where does otherness begin? Where does creation, which creation by definition means otherness, right? There's an other that's being created, you and I, and the entire universe and galaxies. That begins in the divine emotions. And as we mentioned, there are 7 of them, right? 7 days of the week. Each day is illuminated with a specific, right? As we explained what time was back in time. A flow of divine energy that comes in and then retracts. However, just from an emotion, you really can't create. Just like by us, in an emotion, since we're created in the divine image, so we can draw a parallel. Just like from my emotion of love, there's no creativity of that love until it's expressed in words or action by saying, you, I love. You're magnificent. Flowers that you give, some type of gift that you give, right, that expresses that love. And each one is very distinct and different. So this is where multiplicity and distinction comes in, is that the love can be expressed in so many different ways. Okay, so in the act of creation, where multitudinous, where distinctiveness between species, between creations, where it begins, where it's expressed in the divine word. And in the divine word, what we learned in the previous chapter, well, that's in the book of Genesis. That's how God created, right? It wasn't the emotion, wasn't the direct form of creation. Emotion is what? Vested in the words. That's why when you say you, I love, the emotion, of course, needs to be there, right? And why? And not just the emotion is there. What else is there? Your intelligence. You said it in an intelligent way. Not you just said it with intelligence. Your perspective on the person and the reason for the love develops the feeling that now both the intelligence and the feeling is vested in that word. But not just that. Also the will and the desire of the person also vested in that expression, specific expression of you I love, or different expression, you're magnificent. That was amazing. So why is it amazing? Well, because you have an intelligent perspective. You have the desire that you want to express it. You have an intelligence that you understand and perceive how amazing that was, that developed that feeling. And that feeling is now what propels you to the otherness. Because emotions only are there to connect with another. All of that is vested in the word. Now, what we've learned till now is there's, 10 utterances, 10 phrases that God creates the world with. And that's in Genesis, Vayhi or, let there be light, V'hi rakia b'seich hamayim, first day, light. Second day, rakia, firmament that separates, right? And we explained how that's an expression of Gvura, because it's separation, as opposed to or, light is, not light of the sun even, but a greater intense, greater light that is, in a sense, like chesed fuses everywhere, indiscriminate almost, in a sense, just like chesed, kindness is. But the problem is, that's only 10 utterances. How do we get a multitude of species? Well, if you look in the fifth day, when God created, the sixth day, when God created animals, right? There's no particular animals that are mentioned. It's behemoths, chayas, right? No particular fish that are mentioned in creation. It's the general animal kingdom, or on the third day, vegetation. No mention of an oak tree there. No mention of any kind of herbs or anything. The general power. That's the 10 utterances. So how do we get then different species? How do we get different species of trees, different species of animals, different creations, a rock versus a stone, and so on and so forth. It can't come from, it doesn't come from the 10 utterances. It's not there. So that's what we explained in the very beginning of chapter 1. Now we're going into greater detail to appreciate this idea. That's through combinations, substitutions, transpositions of letters. What's combination means? Combination means, for example, that you take letters that are from the 10 utterances and you combine one letter from here and one letter from there. So you take Aleph from or, the letter Aleph you take from the word or, light, and you take a letter Shin from Shemish, from sun, and you put those two letters together, right? This is all a metaphor to understand how now you have a multitude of creations. So first of all, you begin with 22 letters and only 22 letters. By the way, in science and the way you find 22 in the world is an interesting idea, but not for here now. So you take those two letters. They're a combination of the original utterances. It's a come down in the sense that it is not part of the specific 10 utterances that are mentioned in the Torah. Those are creations that are, in a sense, of eternity. So the animal kingdom, it will be here eternally. I mean, will be here, they're not going to be the extinction of the animal kingdom, but there could be an extinction of a specific species. Species aren't mentioned there, right? So this is a come down. So like fire, fire wasn't there at the beginning. It was a discovery. It was a discovery fire. Actually, Saturday night for Shabbos. So that's called a tziruf, a combination of letters. Then there's chilufim, which means substitutions. Substitutions means that there is relationships between letters. The letter Aleph is related to the letter Hey, because both kind of don't pronounce and say anything. The letter Ches and the letter Ayin have a relationship. They're both guttural, right? Both guttural sounds. So there are different letters that have a relationship between them. The first letter and the last letter have a relationship. Aleph and Tuf have a relationship. So you can substitute them. You can substitute them. So if you have an Aleph in the 10 utterances, it can be substituted for a Tuf to make a new word. And then you have transpositions of letters, numeric values of a letter, that it's now just the numeric value of it and not the actual content of the letter, so to speak. Now, what does all that mean? You're making up a new word. That new word is a new vital force, divine energy, that is now animating this creation. Specific, Ari, Aleph, Resh, Yud. That means, spells out the word lion. Hey, it's also the name of a person. I have several grandchildren named Aryeh, from the word lion. The point is that the word of God is then that vital force that is now animating, not just animating, bringing into existence the creation through, again, how? Combination, substitution, transpositions of letters and numeric values of letters. What does that mean? It means now that you could see from 22 letters of all the ways that you could do all these things, and this is all Kabbalistic, this is all God doing it, and he just revealed to us, the way he's creating through the sages of the Torah, that all of them become ad infinitum. How many different types of combinations, substitutions, transpositions, and numeric value of letters that can be had. Hence, without end, different forms of creation that are all created by the Word of God. By the Word of God. Now, that's the generality. It goes now to more specifics. Why are we going into all this? Because when we understand this, we have a much deeper, profound understanding of the power of Creator within creation. We can then appreciate the uniqueness of every created being. More on that to come. So let's understand now. So every letter itself is a flow of divine energy. Yesterday I went at length. We won't go through it now, but every letter, we went through 4 letters, and briefly, very quickly, explaining how each letter, the shape of the letter, the value of the letter, the content, the meaning of the letter, how it is. It's an idea that lives. It's a energy of God that is what he uses as his creative force to bring into existence all of creation and to give it its unique quality. So letter Aleph, right? Aleph means general, it means the chief, the one, number one chief, general God. The Yud, this is a Yud, this is a Yud, that's a Vav, numeric value of 26, which is the Tetragrammaton is numeric value of 26. Yud is 10 divine attributes. The opposite, this is the opposite upside down of that Yud, which means the reflection of this Yud is the soul that also has 10 powers of the soul, and then the Vav, which is a connector. As the word Vav in front of a word means and, that connects one word with another. And the word Vav actually means hook, because it connects the divine with the human. That's one letter. It is a vital force. It is the divine energy, the flow of divine energy that creates. So every letter has that. Now, when you put combinations of letter, now make a word. So the word becomes even more than the letters, because the word is not just the sum total of the letters. The word now has its own meaning, right? A letter doesn't have it has a meaning in a letter, but doesn't have a meaning in a, Aleph. Aleph means general, right? But it's because that's already the way it's spelled out. Aleph, Lamed, Pei, right? So no, when you make now a word, oh, here's a word, God's name, Elohim, right? So the name, the sum total, is not of the letters. It's the name itself as a whole word, or the word itself, is much more powerful divine energy than just its parts coming together. There is the parts, which are an integral part in the divine energy, but then there is the word, and it's like metaphorically, one person can carry 50 pounds. This is a metaphor, so this guy can carry 50 pounds, and this guy can carry 50 pounds. When you put the two together, do they carry only 100 pounds? No. Two come together, they can carry 120 pounds. Why? Because the power of two coming together is greater than the sum total of the parts. That's the idea of the word. Now, in a note, the Alter Rebbe says something here very, very important. It's important that when we talk about a letter, every letter has to be written specifically the way it's meant to be written. If you don't write it properly, right, then it's not that letter. What does it mean? Oh, big deal, so it's not that letter. No, it means it's not that divine energy. It's a different divine energy. So it could be a destructive divine energy if you wrote it inappropriately, as opposed to a building divine energy, or a healthy divine energy, a good divine energy. So it's very important that when you buy a mezuzah, pair of tefillin, that you're buying it from a scribe that you trust, that it was written properly. Because just by way example, if you write the letter Vav, well, let's take the letter Yud over here, right? It's not the proper way you write the Yud. It's just, but if you wrote it down up rather than from the up, it's written a little differently, and then going down, it's not kosher. Now, what's the big deal? In the end, it looks the same. You pronounce it the same. It means the same. No, it's not the same. Every letter is a divine energy field force of God that animates. Now, that's the way God creates the world, but even in his Torah and his mezuzah, right, to do that mitzvah properly, the letter has to be written appropriately. If the Vav is written down up rather than up down, it's not kosher. Well, you have to be able to trust the person that wrote it. Maybe it's easier for them and they're lazy and they do it down up because it was, it was just simpler. You know, I don't believe, hopefully no scribe would do such a thing. But that's not the point over here. The point over here is very simple. That not just the shape, right? But the way the shape was made indicates on the divine flow of divine energy and a light force that comes from God that animates and gives life. So God does it through his act of creation. And of course, God's not writing a word in us. It's the metaphor of understanding that concept of the word. Right? God's not speaking as we speak, but he speaks the world into creation. So very important that, but we do, through a mitzvah, bring divine energy into this world. We bring new divine energy into this world from God um, through the mitzvah, and therefore we have to make sure that the mitzvah is done properly in the mezuzah, in the tefillin, in the Torah scroll, in order that that divine flow will be manifest the light of God, reveal it in the way it's meant to be. Now, so Alter Rebbe says, for example, when we come to the creative force, remember we mentioned that there's 10 utterances, and from 10 utterances there's other creations that come. So there is the utterance, let there be a firmament, right? The heavens above, firmament, between the waters above, spiritual waters above and below. And through those words, 7 heavens are created. Spiritual worlds are created. It's not just this physical world, by the way, that's creation of God, but the spiritual worlds, 7 heavens, and all the components, the celestial hosts in there are also created. So you have from Bahirikiyat, so you have combinations, substitutions, transposition, numeric value of letters. So the 7 heavens, there's a world called Shechakim, from that comes from that where the righteous are righteous. Tzaddik is numeric value of 90. Man is numeric value of 90. The manna that they ate, and this is a spiritual world of being fed heavenly food in the spiritual realm. What's it created from? Combination, substitutions, transposition of letters that come from the words, the letters that make up the words. Hirakia, let there be a firmament. How that's done, he doesn't explain that over here, but just giving an example that from that utterance, there's many subdivisions of worlds that are created, spiritual worlds, and in that many different kinds of spiritual entities, angels, souls, and so on and so forth. You have another called Zvul in one of the spiritual realms that are created through the words Yehirakia, which there is the heavenly Jerusalem, the heavenly holy temple, and the altar, and so on. Then you have Machon, that world that is created, where you have the stores of rain and snow and hail, meaning the spiritual realm of where all these things come from, because as we've learned, from the spiritual evolves to the physical. So this is all coming from the words Hirakia, not specifically, but again from combination, substitutions, and transposition, numeric values of letters that come down and are now become the creative force to bring into existence, give unique quality to the level of Shechakim, Zvul, Machon, all 3 different worlds, spiritual worlds of the 7 spiritual worlds above. Just giving this by way of example. And that's the basic idea today. That's the basic idea. Now, to tie this all in, tie this all in with mentioned in the beginning. This is about Yichud Tata, the lower level of unity. And if you have a higher level of unity where there's no other reality but the divine, right? My hand is not a hand, it's only an extension of the divine will. And what's the divine will? Do good, do a mitzvah. That's what my hand is. It's just a do-gooder, nothing else. That's how I perceive it. That's how I live with it. I mean, I'm saying those words. Am I living that way? That's a different story, right? That will come in our journaling when we journal, starting on Thursday. That's the higher level. The lower level, it's not just a lower level so we can, at least be in the picture. On one level it is, but in a moment it's more than that. In other words, being in the picture that I have a hand. The hand can do many different things. Things, lots of things. First level, there's no thing. The hand's not a thing. It's divine. Extension of the divine will. That's all. No thing. This, it's a thing. It's a thing. It's called a hand. It can throw a baseball. It could take a pen and write a poem. It can also do, and the greatest thing it could do is a mitzvah. Ultimately, that's what it's there for, right? For the mitzvah. Now, it could be you throw a baseball, could be in an act of doing a mitzvah. It could be writing a poem in an act of doing a mitzvah. But let's say it's not. Playing baseball because you want to play baseball. Nothing to do with the divine will, right? Nothing to do with that. It could be. Not that baseball can be against the divine will, but not necessarily is part of the divine will, right? But this lower level of divine unity means that there's a reality of existence. There's a reality of a hand that is different than a foot. That there's a oak tree that's different than a cedar tree. Now, if in the end, there's nothing else but God, so what's the difference? Here's the uniqueness of Yichud Tata, the lower level of unity, that gives something that we need this lower level together with the higher level. We need both of them. What is it? Is that in the distinctiveness, in the individuality, appreciating it for what it is, and yet, at the same time, recognizing that it is nothing else but divine. There is a greater refinement that comes in the world that when we appreciate, not that we're all the same, we're all brothers and sisters of Jews, and we're all the same, and just love every single Jew, no matter who, and no matter where, and no matter what. Of course, there's a reality to that. No distinction. But then there is, appreciate the distinctiveness of this person versus another person, the uniqueness of them. At the same time, a fellow Jew. At the same time, part of God. You appreciate the difference between the oak tree and the cedar tree. What's the difference? It's all part of God. No. There's a greater refinement that if in the details of creation that you understand and appreciate and you come to, you plummet more the depth of creation, the depth of another human being, another fellow Jew, and appreciating who they are and what they are and their specialness. There's a greater refinement of self and a greater refinement of the world as a result of our engagement in the world, because we're dealing with the individuality, the specialness, uniqueness of everything. And yet, it's all bound up with God. With God. That's the lower level of yichud, of unity. Again, the higher level, my arm's not an arm. It's an extension of the divine will. That's all it is. But then, so's my leg. My leg is the same thing. Right? You won't have an appreciation of the uniqueness of everything within the divine order of things. Won't, because it's all it's a ray of sun within the sun. There's no distinction between one ray and another ray. But in Yehudit Atah, and that's why we're ending off. Well, it'll be tomorrow we'll end off, but we end off with Yehudit Atah because in a way it's even greater accomplishment because it demands much more of an engagement in life. The first one is a harder one to reach to, that there's, bittul b'metzias, that there's no reality but God. The second one is, harder to, in a sense, harder to get there, but this one is more engaging, and hence more refining of the world, refining of self. Again, appreciating that uniqueness of every one and everything in creation, and ultimately how it's truly bound up and one with God. Any questions, any comments? I hope people got that, because it's a very powerful idea that we could miss this nuance in Shar Yuchad very easily. Alter Rebbe really doesn't spell this out in the writings itself, but this is from some of my teachers. Davida, I don't see any questions. Did I miss a question on Facebook? I don't see. Do we have any questions here? Michelle, Michelle has a question, and Jeff has a question, and Tim. All right, please, Michelle, share with us.
Well, it's not. Hi, Rabbi.
Hello.
It's not so much of a question, but I just picked up on what you said. You said, just from an emotion, we can't create until it's expressed in words and action. So I'm taking from that, unless the emotion and desire combined is expressed, it means nothing. The intent means nothing. The intention to love.
Right.
And I just wanted to quote something, but I'm very nervous because Rabbi Litvin is in the room and I'm about to quote his uncle. Is there any way he can come on stage in case I get this wrong?
For sure, absolutely, with pleasure. Sure, go ahead. Who's his uncle? Who's his uncle that you're quoting? Welcome, Rabbi Litvin.
Hi, Rabbi Litvin. Rabbi Tversky, that's your uncle, am I correct?
Cousin, yeah. But not.
So, yeah.
So go ahead.
So he said, we don't give to those because we love them. We love those because we give to them. Is that correct, Rabbi Litvin?
Yeah.
And the point he was making was, if I'm giving you my time, my emotions, my words, I'm investing part of me in you. And I'm giving you part of me that I'm probably not giving anyone else. And because part of me is now in you, and since loving myself is a given, we all love ourselves. Therefore, I love the part of myself that's inside you. So I guess that's the arm which you were talking about, which represents giving. And I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you. Very, very nice. Yes. Rabbi Tversky, Olav Shalom. Very, very special Jew. So, well, just to clarify, when we speak about emotions, we're speaking about not conscious emotions, because once it's conscious, that means it's in thought, right? So that means that's the thinking of the emotion. Here we're talking about an emotion that is beyond the language, any form of language. It produces language of thought, because what we have strong feelings about is what we end up thinking about, right? So that's when we speak about emotion, and that's why emotion is the movement towards another, but it isn't yet the ultimate bond with another because it hasn't been expressed. When it's expressed in first in thoughts to myself, and then in speech, then there's the beginning of the bond and the connection to another. So likewise in the divine order, and that's what we're speaking about over here, if God were to create merely from emotion, um, we would have um, we wouldn't have otherness. We wouldn't have separate entities of being. It's only through the Word of God that we have that. Um, and that's the notion over here. However, to tie in with what you said, which is very true, in my words, when I say you, I love, in those words it is vested, enclosed is my feeling of love, my intelligence and awareness of that love, and my desire, my willingness and desire and openness, um, that propels ultimately that I express that love in the word saying, you know, for example, to your loved one, you I love, right? Or you are amazing. Uh, so that's all vested in there exactly. And that's why what you're doing is giving a piece of you in that expression, that you're vesting it in the other. Very, very well. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Jeff.
Well, I don't know how I could follow Michelle with that one, but I guess I wanted to ask something a little bit more practical. I have two questions, but I'll just try this one.
Go ahead.
So first of all, today absolutely mind blowing in the sense of the the decoding with permutations and the developing with the different shapes of the letters and so on, and it's hard to imagine, but it's very good demonstrations you gave. The basic, I think I can get that. But I guess what I wanted to say is, you mentioned sometimes that these are like analogies or they're examples or by way of demonstration. I guess at what point I apologize for not being clear, but at what point are the letters that the letters themselves are divine creations? At what point is are the examples that you're giving examples of God's creations? And at what point are they God's creations? In other words, I think you're saying that they're kind of like examples in some sense. Does that make any sense?
I don't know if example is the word. In other words, when we say, the word or, when God says the word or, right? Vahi or, he is, he's not saying the word or as I say the word or, right? He's not limited to a mouth with breath, physical breath that comes out of the mouth, and the movement of my lips and my tongue, my teeth, and the larynx, and everything that goes together with saying any words that we say. So the metaphor is of us to understand, to appreciate the way it is in the divine order of things, but God doesn't have, the physical limitations that we have in the creative process. So in that sense, I don't know if I don't know if example is the word I used, but it is the
metaphor.
It is a
Yeah.
metaphor. It's the metaphor because, again, let me give you an example. The Torah tells us that God took us out of Egypt with an outstretched arm. What does that mean, an outstretched arm? The truth is, what is an arm? So if you look in Webster's dictionary, so it'll tell you an arm is this physical, object that is, an extension of your shoulder, right, and so on. But it also will tell you that an arm is something that that gives you the capacity to reach somewhere or something or whatever, right? That's what an arm is. An arm an arm of the robot or the arm of the chair, right? So what does it mean? So really what an arm is the capacity to reach to another, right? So we reach out to another by giving tzedakah, by helping people with our arms. If we lift an object for somebody to help them to bring, the old lady from Pasadena to help her walk her across the street, you've an outstretched arm, right? We do that. But the ultimate outstretched arm is God Almighty. But he doesn't have a physical imitation of an arm. But here's that he reaches down so far that we are in the 49 levels of impurity. We're so far removed. We're almost at the point of no return. And God reaches out to you and I and brings us out of bondage, brings us out not only of bondage, but not only brings us from a dunghill of heap heap of dunghill that we were living on, but he brings us into the inner chamber and gives us a connection and a bond to him. That's really an outstretched arm. So that's all a metaphor, but really, in a sense, maybe our arm is a facsimile of God's arm. Nothing else but that. So in the truth, it's really the other way around. Our arm is a facsimile, is a metaphor for the divine arm of God. So the same thing is when it comes to divine attributes, the same thing comes to speech and so on and so forth. However, we look at it the other way around only because we're human and we're starting off with the human, with the human element as opposed to the divine element of things. Does that bring some clarity, Jeff?
Yeah, but when Tanya explains this, and when the Alter Rabbi gives additional explanation, are these explanations the best? In other words, are these metaphors so that we can possibly begin to understand?
Absolutely, and that's the whole point. The whole point of Chabad Hasidus is exactly Chabad, Chachma Bina V'das, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. In other words, we can take the fact that God created a world, the infinite God creates a finite world. We can take that on faith. We can take that because the Torah tells us that. We can take that totally just on faith. Chabad teachings is that we want to enhance the faith. How? By internalizing the faith through our minds, understanding. When we understand it, then that will feed our heart, that we will have a much more closer connection to God, a feeling towards God of love and awe, much more so because it is now brought into the human element of understanding, and therefore through that understanding the feelings, and through the feelings ultimately bring it to the ultimate purpose of changing us in our behavior of thought, speech, and action. So that's really the goal over here. So we need to know in order that we could much more deeply connect and act upon that connection, and then we come to a much more deeper sense of ultimate, awareness of the divine unity. Yeah. Okay.
When you put it that way, it's simple.
Yeah. The intent is simple. The journey is a long journey, but we're here for the long run. Yeah. So Tim, just give me a moment. Just Jane is asking a question. Can a non-Jew achieve the greater refinement in order to appreciate the divine uniqueness of a person or thing? Well, that's what we're learning over here, and hopefully, Shar Yicha Ve'amuna is something for a non-Jew to appreciate and to understand the divine unity, although it's specific Jewish teachings, but this is something that is, yes, for non-Jews. As a matter of fact, I forget the name of the scientist, and I forgot to call Dr. Brower, who told me the story of a world-class scientist, non-Jew, who studied the 12 chapters here of Shar Yicha Ve'amuna, and as he expressed it, this is pure physics of the universe, and that's what it is. Pure physics of the universe, the pure truth. Michael, how does one become a scribe? What a challenge. How do you become a scribe? You go to scribe school. You need a scribe to teach you. That's how you become a scribe. I'm not one, so I can't teach that. I'm sorry. Anna, and our intelligence, emotions, also divine creations. Everything is a divine creation. The only thing where the divine is not creating, is in our choice to choose the divine or not to choose the divine. That's the element of where we have the capacity, where there's a, so to speak, a void in a sense. that where we come into play and to choose what we want. Tim, please share with us.
I believe you answered my question with from Jeff's question, but I would like confirmation. Going with the letter Aleph, the Hebrew letter Aleph, as the metaphor. My question simply was, if you write that letter, I'm sorry, go back. That letter written properly contains the divine energy, and however, if you used shorthand of the Hebrew letter Aleph or cursive or
right.
or some other form, then the divine energy is not is there, but not there. Maybe I'm getting that. I'm hearing that your answer to Jeff's question is that it's that and the whole upper and the lower is basically that seems to be the answer.
Well, so it depends on what we're talking about. If we're talking about God and creation, so then it's the Aleph is not the physical Aleph as we perceive it. Although there's a story of Adam in the Garden of Eden, and he named all the animals because when he looked at the animals, he saw the divine word that animates it. Now, was it a physical word that is animating? No, but he was able to perceive that from the divine energy that's animating it, these are the letters, and therefore these letters make up this word, and therefore when he looked at a lion, he saw Ari. I don't know exactly what he saw, but he saw that this is what we call it because this is its divine field of energy that brings it into existence and gives it a unique quality. Now, that's in the divine order of things. In the human element, and that's perhaps what you're speaking about, Tim, is if I'm writing a letter, to somebody, I'm writing notes for myself, or I'm writing a pan as I did, I wrote in Hebrew my pan, my note to the Rebbe on Gimel Tammuz. So I wrote cursive, and I do try to write neat, so even though I'm only the one that's reading it, but still, but if I didn't write it appropriately, right, as the way it is for a mezuzah or for tefillin or for a Torah scroll, that's okay, because there it's more about did you get the message of what you're writing. But when you're writing it in a Torah scroll, again a mezuzah or a tefillin, it is now a vehicle of mitzvah that has itself. What is a mitzvah? We've learned in the past. What does a mitzvah do? A mitzvah creates a union between the male and female parts of the divine. Kadosh Baruch Hu and Shekhinah creates a union. And what does a union do? Well, a union is supposed to bring a new being into, ultimately. The concept of male and female union brings new life into this world. Well, when we do a mitzvah, it brings new life into this world. You're bringing new life. Every time you're putting on your tefillin, every time, you give tzedakah, you're creating a union above, you're bringing new light, new life into this world. You don't do that any other way, because E equals MC squared. You're not bringing any life into this world in any other way except through the vehicle of a mitzvah. So, if you're putting on your tefillin, and the tefillin are not kosher because the letter was not written appropriate, or one letter is, the pen that the scribe used connected one letter to another letter, meaning they're not separated, means it's not kosher. Not kosher, what does it mean it's not kosher? It means that the divine light of God, that by putting on that tefillin, that you now create this union of male and female and bringing new life, new vitality into this world, you're not doing. You're not doing it. So that is therefore crucial in a literal sense, not in a figurative sense, each letter, how it's written. Is that clear? Does that resonate? Make sense?
Yes, thank you, Rabbi.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. Okay, I saw over here. I have to get to John. John has the is the effect of the collective energetic flow that binds the individual energies together related to the physicists call strong nuclear force that bonds protons and neutrons together. Oh, that's beyond my grade of science, John. I'm sorry. I only have a grade, whatever, 13 science. That was many years ago. There's more elements in the elemental chart since I finished learning my last, at least real engagement in science. But I don't know. You'll have to answer that for me, John. I don't know. I don't know. Okay, John. So, John, you'll have to help me there. Do we have any other questions? Any other comments?
I do, Rabbi.
Go. Sure. Was that Vilma? Go ahead, Vilma.
So, as I understand it, there's a reality that's here, this lower world, that seems diverse. There's a distinction and a sense of separateness because that's how God designed it. However, there's only one God, and that's an awareness that we work on. Creation, by its very definition, means otherness in this world. It begins, as you said, with divine emotions, the seven sephirot, and there's a greater refinement when we appreciate this uniqueness and distinction that exists in this world, in each creation, in each person, while at the same time becoming acutely aware that they are a part of God, just as I am. So in the details of creation and getting to know other people, like deeply, not superficially, we appreciate who they are and what they are. And that's how, as I understand it, we gain a greater refinement dealing with the individuals in this world. And so I've come to the conclusion that the harmony and the diversity of creation is something that we create in an awareness of our own lives and how we relate to others.
Very good. Yes, absolutely. So, absolutely. Okay, excuse me, J. Through the union of male and female aspects, new life is born. Then why so many cultures this union is called a sinful and disrespected? Very good. Right, and actually, every other, from here we see something amazing. With the point that I just brought out, which is not what the Alter Rebbe is speaking about over here, but in our conversation we do digress into other areas, and that is male and female union in every other culture and religion is seen either sinful or like a what's the word a weakness of the human spirit that, a weakness of the human spirit. That's how it's looked at, right? And there's a truth to it, right? There's a truth to it. And we see how ultimately in Western civilization in particular, how sexuality has become a very a disturbed place, a very confused place, very problematic, very problematic. But that's not Judaism and that's not Kabbalah. It is ultimately a reflection of divine union. It's a divine union. And hence, the union between husband and wife is actually called the Holy of Holies. Now, you got to be careful in the Holy of Holies because, when the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, would go in there on Yom Kippur, you have to be very careful in what you're thinking and what, how you're engaging over here. Are you just a narcissist? And then it didn't make it through. The Kohen Gadol did not make it through. So likewise in relations, it's the Holy of Holies. But that being said, It means holiness. Well, that's why it's only husband and wife. That's why it's only when the wife is in a state of purity after the mikvah. Um, and it's, it's a holy act as opposed to a animalistic act. Now, that's the choice we have. Judaism teaches, though, that it is of holiness, and it's not a weakness. It could be a weakness, depending on what you choose. If you choose just to express your own needs and your own pleasure, then yeah, then it is a weakness, right? But Judaism tells us no, it's not. That's not what, it doesn't have to be that, rather. It doesn't have to be a weakness. It could be an act of holiness, depending on, am I doing this for a higher purpose? Am I doing this in a recognition that there is, through this, it's a holy act, and that there is a greater bond than just me seeking my own pleasure? That will change a lot of this world. And a lot of the problems in this world today, if this simple little teachings was out there, and that was just byproduct of today. And again, that comes from the idea of above, in the human realm, in the divine realm, that when we do a mitzvah, we're creating a union. We create a union above. All right, folks. Anybody? So thank you, Jay, for sharing that. I hope that brought elucidation. Just a reminder, today I'm giving a class, Pirkei Avos, Jewish Ethics, today at 12:45. It's going to be on 770, 6085 for Zoom. And it will be on Chabad ZK at the same time. Actually, I might, yeah.
What's the London time, Rabbi?
The London time, Michelle, will be, you're 5 hours ahead of us, right? The English are always ahead of us. So that will be 5:45.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. All right. All right, folks. I think I've answered all the questions. I think so.
Thank you, Rabbi. It's a pleasure as always.
A reminder, tomorrow we make a siyum, a conclusion of these 12 chapters, so make sure you join in. And very excited
Rabbi,
also for the following day.
Rabbi,
yes, Jeff.
should we have a l'chaim ready
For tomorrow?
Conclusion tomorrow?
Absolutely. Oh, thank you, Jeff. All right. Good man. Yes, everybody should have a l'chaim ready. Have your cup, your mug. Now you can have, I'm going to have some Glenlivet because I got some right here. I'll also have some water. So whatever you share with, that's good. A l'chaim. If it's a bottle of water.
I'm going to have an arak.
All right, arak is good. Kosher wine is good. And if you don't have kosher wine, don't use another wine. Use water. You know, water's for sure kosher. All right. Yeah, thank you, Jeff, for mentioning that. Beautiful. Okay. So, looking forward. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zich in Kedeshim in Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Have a wonderful day. Sei gesund.